Hello and welcome back to Atheism Exposed. Today, just for a break from the regularly scheduled programme, I thought I'd provide some illustrative answers to the atheist cultists who persist in promoting their unbiblical atheistic, so-called heliocentric worldview on the comments to my videos and in my inbox. These usually include quite a lot of profanity and choice phrases such as "lol, you're retard," a response I've come to expect from atheist masses, programmed with too much hate and not enough grammar as they usually are. So I've lined up several heliocentric ducks in a row which I shall now proceed to shoot down. Firstly, the atheist will tell you that the sun is 90 million miles away from us and is billions of times larger than the Earth, rendering the possibility of it being in orbit of us impossible according to the laws of motion as described by various atheist cultists. Now, this is clearly rubbish. Looking at the sun with that most incredible of scientific instruments, your eyes, you can see that it's more or less of equal size to the moon. This observation is also clearly in line with Scripture. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let there be for signs, and for seasons, and for days, and for years." So no, the sun is not millions of miles away, nor is it millions of times larger than the Earth. It is of a similar size to, and a similar orbit to, the moon. A second point, brought up by atheists, is their difficulty in understanding the nature of the oscillation of the orbit of the sun, which causes the seasons as we experience them on Earth. The claim made by atheists is that if the sun were orbiting us and oscillating as geocentrists know it to be, the sun would have a greater angular distance from the Earth at points in its orbit where it's far above or below the equator. Now superficially this seems to be the case. If this were true, then at some points of the year the apparent diameter of the sun would appear smaller due to the extra distance from us. And that just doesn't happen, does it, atheists? Oh wait, it does happen! Yes, atheists use this nonsensical argument to supposedly show the geocentric model to be impossible, and then they turn right around and explain that the Earth's orbit is elliptical, and there are different points they call perihelion and aphelion, namely the points furthest from and closest to the Sun, allegedly explaining the increasing and decreasing apparent diameter of the Sun as seen from Earth. So something that's perfectly in keeping with the geocentric biblical model of the universe somehow manages to disprove the geocentric model with its non-existence, while simultaneously requiring a frankly laughable explanation in the heliocentric model. So which is it, atheists? Does the sun's apparent magnitude from the Earth change throughout the year, or not? In addition to this, gravity doesn't allow for elliptical orbits. If the Earth was in motion around the sun, and the sun was massive, as atheists claim, the sun's gravity would force an elliptical orbit into a circular one over time. Now this raises an interesting paradox for the atheist, for he either has to accept that the Earth having an elliptical orbit is a facile impossibility due to gravitation, or he has to admit that the atheistic timescale for the universe is impossible. If the solar system were billions of years old, we would see the Earth in a perfectly circular orbit, now wouldn't we? And on the subject of impossible orbital motions in the heliocentric model, let's move on to atheistic claim number 2. The apparent retrograde motion of Venus is another bit of data often cited by the atheist to defend the wholly indefensible heliocentric model, this even though it's a devastating blow to the concept of an old universe. You see, if Venus were orbiting the Sun in the opposite direction from the angular rotation of the Sun, it would be a total contravention of the law of conservation of momentum. The atheist is very keen to present long screeds of numbers and equations to support his, but in this instance the physics is very much against them, no matter how he tries. In contrast, the heliosphere model of an Earth-centered universe displays clearly the reason and the narrative to explain the retrograde motion of Venus. Being set into one of the crystalline spheres of the firmament, Venus would have been physically displaced when God tore open the firmament to allow the torrent of water for the Noachian flood. Due to this great force, Venus' own inertia, and the lack of friction in space, this displacement of motion continues today, as the Venus heliosphere continues its retrograde orbit around the Earth. Simple. The third point I wish to raise is a strange insistence by atheist cultists that the speed of light in a vacuum, or c, is constant. Most modern research, including some by atheist cultists themselves, shows that over the last 150 years, the speed of light has slowed noticeably. While this is in keeping with other physical forces like the Earth's magnetic field and the slow but perceptible slowing of the inner heliospheres, something from which we can measure the approximate date of the Day of Judgment, it's totally at odds with, and utterly devastating to, the silly heliocentric model proposed by atheists. You see, all of the laws and equations they use to measure the universe are called into question if the speed of light is not a constant. Everything from E equals mc squared, to those horrific redshift calculations, to the silly parallax nonsense, to this cunningly invented starlight problem they crafted in an attempt to equivocate away the evidence for a young Earth, It's all falsified if we can show that c is not constant. So what a crying shame it is that we can do exactly that, isn't it? The edifice that is atheistic science is shaking. People are waking up and seeing that the science establishment has made its foundation on assumptions that don't stand up to observation and scrutiny. It's my hope that one day soon we can sweep away the debris that is the atheistic worldview and reinstate provable, biblical worldview to its rightful place in the sciences and in the classroom. One possibility to explain this is that light is not travelling in a vacuum, but instead being transmitted through a luminiferous ether. This is an old idea, long discarded by the atheist cult, but one which stands up to investigation today by independent observers. And this brings me on to my final evidence I wish to raise with you for a geocentric universe and a stationary Earth. In 1887, two atheist cultists performed an experiment they thought would prove the Earth's supposed movement around the Sun. This experiment was designed such that it would test the relative speed of movement through the luminiferous ether, the background of space, if you will. To their surprise, they found that the Earth was barely moving at all, a tiny fraction of what they expected to find. That there was any movement detected at all can be ascribed to low sensitivity of the equipment, margins of error, but they more or less proved right there that the Earth was stationary, not moving through space, not moving through the ether. Of course, the atheistic establishment would never have accepted this, going against their preconceived assumptions about the universe. So Michelson and Morley simply rejected the concept of the ether instead. It's funny how science is so quick to throw out well-known and well-documented physical phenomena that don't fit the pattern, isn't it? It would be funny if it wasn't so deadly serious. In any case, I hope that's cleared up a few misconceptions and myths spread by the atheists. I will return to the original plan with a new episode of Atheism Exposed in the near future. Until then, go with God. Thank you.